Hey Peyton, just wanted to give a little video response to make this communication a little better. I just wanted to apologize for the way I drilled you, asking you for positive evidence. That's somewhat of a knee-jerk reaction, I guess, for me. Let's see, a lot of this kind of conversation is very similar to a lot of the atheist-theist arguments, and in those places, the atheist can say, give me your positive reason. I don't need to really give a positive reason for not believing. You need to give me a positive reason for believing. And I kind of drilled you asking for your positive reasons to explain your position more without explaining mine as much. When really the idea that free will is necessary for punishment and all these studies and that free will matters to us, really matters, is somewhat of a natural assumption. It's what we feel like matters. And it's natural that you would assume the same thing. And so it's the burden of proof really isn't on you to say why it matters. It was on me to say why it doesn't. That doesn't mean any of your arguments are right, but they're wrong. But the proof really is really on me, and I apologize for not setting forth to give that. So let's look at what. So let's get into it. So morality. There's only one basis of morality, and that is the well-being of conscious creatures. There's no real dispute among this. Even if you go to the only other theory that really is out there is divine command theory, but not even that. Even that really is not a different theory. For example, if you talk about Christians, they say that divine command theory is God told you so or whatever. But what the real reason people think those things are bad or good is because they end up putting you in heaven for eternity or hell for eternity, and that if someone believes in God, the good of that is that they're able to be with God for eternity. It's not just the fact that God said so, it's the fact that you get to be with God eternally in heaven, and that so do your friends and family, and that by spreading the word, more of your friends and family get to go to heaven with God or whatever. But even then, you have to ask, what is really good about being in heaven with your friends and family for eternity versus burning in hell with Satan for eternity? And that goes back to the same basis of the well-being of conscious creatures is what matters. That's the difference. So there's only one basis for morality. So let's talk about why free will doesn't change that basis of morality. You kind of claim it does. You talk about punishment and that there's no basis for punishment without free will, because if a person wasn't free to make that decision, then they shouldn't have been punished. But that actually never should have happened even with free will to begin with. Free will didn't change that. Whether free will exists or not, that never should have happened in the way you described. As punishment being simply revenge. Simply just because you hurt someone, we're going to hurt you back, even though it doesn't help anyone else except hurting you. That's the only thing it does is hurt you. And it doesn't help anyone else, but it hurts you, and because you hurt someone else, you need to be hurt back. That doesn't increase the well-being of conscious creatures, right? Like by hurting one, you normally don't instantly increase, right? And I think, but the problem is that punishment isn't isolated in that way, like I just described. By people do respond to incentives. So we can imagine, we can use a thought experiment to isolate these things. So let's imagine we could put people in prison, and that's one way we can control them. Oh, it's backwards. So imagine we put people in prison, that's one way we control them. And the other way we can control them is with this dial that increases their happiness or either increases their misery or decreases their misery, for example. So we can separate punishment from the safety of others in this thought experiment. So let's say there is free will, and we put some psychopathic murderer in there. Is there any basis in morality as defined as the well-being of conscious creatures? After we've already put him in prison and we've protected everyone from him, is there any reason to increase his misery at all? No. Under that basis of morality, there is none. Let's take away free will. Does that change that situation? No. So whether free will exists or not, your basis for revenge and punishment just for punishment's sake is never there. But punishment as a social function which incentivizes people to do better things rather than bad things, um, that can increase the well-being of conscious creatures as a whole. And I'm pretty sure it does. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. That's a scientific question, not a moral question. And free will has nothing to do with that. So free will doesn't have anything to do with that part of morality. And if there was a part of morality that it really was going to matter, wouldn't it be that? Like, if if there was a place in morality for it, that would be it. Well, let's talk about some of the other sciences. There are a lot of if you define morality in that way, you can then explore more. As Sam Harris would say, moral landscapes through the different sciences in that way. We can look at psychology, economics, and sociology, and you claim that free will affects these sciences. I couldn't disagree further. One thing you talk about is economics and rational behavior theory. I kind of attacked you, but I didn't really explain the truth of the matter here. Like, I kind of just told you you were wrong, so I'm sorry about that. But economists never, repeat, never make the assumption that people behave rationally. That is not. It's just not something they do. It's never required. It's not part of the theory. But they do make something else that sounds like that. They say that statistical populations of groups behave in a way that is modeled by individuals who act rationally. In other words, you can say that statistical populations of groups react to incentives in the same in in the way that you would expect, as if the individuals themselves behaved that way. But at no point do we need to say that the individuals actually do. It's a lot like the law of large numbers in statistics and math. We don't actually require any of the underlying variables to be normally distributed. They can be any distribution, but if you sum them all up and find the average, it's going to be a normal distribution overall as you start looking at populations. So this need for free will in economics just isn't there, like you claim it is. Let's talk about maybe psychology and neuroscience. Well, no, it's even worse through there. Neuroscience, in a way, already implicitly assumes that there is no free will. It already assumes that the reason you choose something is because of a chemical reaction in your brain, and they try to find that chemical reaction. You never, I mean, you don't choose the chemical reactions in your brain. Neuroscience doesn't think that the reason this particular neuron fired versus that one is because some spirit named Eric chose it. They think it's all natural causes caused by firings in the brain. Um, um, so it's all there. Now, this brings up one other thing with your study of determinism versus free will. And you talk about how neuroscience isn't able to fully predict people's behavior beforehand or whatnot. That determinism versus indeterminism. Well, in neuroscience, the only thing we've been able to do so far is find correlations of people who experience anxiety with a certain activity in the part of the brain. We haven't been able to show why why this activity in the brain causes anxiety, or how this activity differs from any other activity. It's not there yet. But that doesn't mean that it's not an um, the chemical firings in your brain aren't the underlying cause. So neuroscience, and then psychology doesn't disagree with neuroscience much. It just is a different way of looking at it, as a more higher level view. Free will or lack thereof makes no difference on the study of economics. It makes no difference on the study of psychology, nor neuroscience, nor does it make any difference in the way we view morality. So I hope I've better explained a viewpoint for you here, and maybe you can come up with some arguments again, that positive arguments that might break through that later. But